All right, looks like the time is here. So we have about 12 people online and like about 6 people in the room here, and we want to make sure and let people in though. Yeah, we'll leave the door open. There's a sign on the gate. There's next. So for those of you who weren't with us on the first listening session, we will review just really briefly what we went over.
What is it, you're supposed to go to more than one?
Yeah, you missed it.
Yeah.
There's three, hey Gary, there's three, of you missed the first.
Yeah.
But aren't we all, they're all the same?
No, no, so
Is it that big of a story?
it's a lot of stuff that we have to talk about, and if you are interested in seeing the first, it's recorded on our website, so you can watch it.
I just assume there's one would be sufficient, but.
Yeah.
My misunderstanding.
Yeah, we would, if we could, we would make it in one, but it would be a long meeting.
So we're gonna go over new material that was not talked about.
New material, yeah, we're gonna try to keep it under an hour.
But aren't we talking about putting, meters on the well, is that what we're talking about?
And well registration programs. So there are a lot of details about how other GSAs do it, or other groundwater management agencies do it, how we're proposing to do it. And we want to hear from you if that seems undoable or not the best way to do it, then we want to hear. So save your comments till the end. We're going to do a presentation at the beginning here. The meeting's being recorded, as you know. We're on Zoom as well. There's a sign-in sheet, so please sign in if you haven't already, or before you leave at least, to help us out. We are taking notes, and we will, at the end of the 3 sessions, try to summarize the feedback that we received and present it to the GSA board. Okay. So, as I said, we had a listening session, number 1 on March 31st. We covered the timeline for the policy implementation, and policy adoption and implementation of the program. We also talked about well registration requirements. We talked a little bit about well meter requirements, but we're going to cover that in detail today. We'll also cover well status and location, data collection, and exemptions from the program. So key takeaways from the last listening session 1 was our goals to finalize and adopt the policy by no later than the end of June of this year. I know it's an aggressive schedule, but we need to do it so we can leave enough time for meters to actually be installed, and then for there to be enough time to collect the data to actually use that data for billing. So that'll give the properties until the end of March 2026 to both register their wells and install meters for this policy. We would like to also, we talked about AMI system, which is basically a transmitter that you put on the wellhead or on the meter, and it transmits the meter read back to the district's database, and then we don't have to spend money on staff going out there and looking at it every month. That information again will be available to all the well owners via smartphone or website. So we would like to do get those installed by March and April of 2026. As we discussed last week, the GSA will provide those endpoints. What we call endpoints are basically transmitters on all well meters, and will utilize the existing system, the database system that collects all of those reads and then organizes them for people to view, including the district.
You mean what the house currently reading the meters from everybody in town?
Exactly. Same system.
It'll feed into that.
Yep.
Yeah. You say everybody has access to that, you're talking about their own stuff, but not everything. So
right. It'll be a, if you own the meter in the well, access to that meter and well only.
Mhm.
So,
Correct.
Well, the one thing for Jerry's benefit is that the county is granting $500 per meter right now, that's been approved. Or
yes, we have to adopt this policy first.
Okay.
Before we're eligible, but once we adopt the policy, the county has $500 per meter installation for wells.
But that's for new meters, not for existing.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but it's worth it.
It's not, I think there's a few meters out there, so you might as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so all of this is for the timing, all of this is to try, by April, May of 2027, start sending the first billings that are based on meters. So as you may recall, currently we do pumping estimates and, you know, it has its issues, so, this will be sort of the, this will be the replacement system for that system. So as far as registration, it will simply require, CGSA form to be filled out by the well owner. We haven't concluded what information we'd like to get, as much information obviously as we can on the well, so we understand how it's, being utilized and what pumping rates, you know, it may have. And there are some, there was some discussion about wells that are being shared and how to divide up information of who's using that well. And we plan to add some additional pages to the applicator to the form for well registration, so that all of that information can be input. New wells will have 30 days from well completion to register and install meters per the policy. CGSA will require 1 meter per well, monitored by the CGSA with CGSA fitting fees billed to the APM of the parcel the well resides on. We talked about there are some wells out there that have their own well parcel. Even in that case, the bill goes to whoever owns that parcel. They have, if it's shared, they have to figure out how to divvy it up between the shared members of that well. Meter accuracy testing, we are planning to go, or we're proposing to go with a 5% accuracy requirement and testing every 3 years. This is similar to Fox Canyon's GMA. There was some discussion about that, but not a lot. It didn't seem to be too onerous as far as that testing regime. And then finally, for compliance or enforcement, I guess, if a meter is not maintained within the accuracy range or installed at all, then we would use a crop factor calculation or some other methodology to calculate the fees for that well. And you're going to talk about Fox Canyon on that, or?
Yeah, we might listening stuff.
Bob, just a question then, of Danielle. I thought we were gonna have these meters checked by an independent meter tester, like we do our backflow device every 3 years. So if the meter is not up to speed, you're telling me we're gonna go back to estimating?
Just that well.
Oh, until the well owner fixes the problem.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, in Fox Canyon, the way they do it is they double the estimate, just so there's no incentive to.
Okay.
Look me about it.
So that's what you guys talked about last week. These 3 by 2 days.
Yes, these are good.
Okay, I'll get you the PowerPoint from last meeting. we did.
It's on the website as well, so.
I think there's enough information.
So as I said, there's the website. You can go to the CGSA. There's a button that says public listening sessions. You click on that. You'll see the last listening session, both the PowerPoint and the link to the YouTube video. And then again, this meeting will be on that link and this slide. All right, with With that, I'm gonna hand it over to Danielle and talk about some of the things that we are gonna cover tonight.
So last listening session, we mentioned that we're pulling a lot of the ideas from other local groundwater management agencies. So Ojai Basin has had a groundwater management agency in place since 1982, and they've been metering since 1983. Fox Canyon has been established since 1991 and metering since 1993. So a lot of the information that we're sharing, we didn't pull out of thin air. We're looking at the existing policies and drafting our policy based on information from these various agencies.
I'm sorry.
I hope you guys do better than the job for the Fox Canyon, because they're not doing a very good job.
So, as mentioned, Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency, they cover the eastern portions of the city of Ojai and areas between Ojai and Santa Paula further to the east. Fox Canyon covers a larger territory, 3 different groundwater basins underlying Moore Park, Camarillo, Oxnard, and Portland. So we're able to learn from their staff what has and hasn't worked, and then draft up a policy that sets us up for success based on their failures and successes over the years. This is the updated timeline. As Bob emphasized, we're really trying to stick to May 1st through April 30th as the billing period, starting in 2026 into 2027. This provides CGSA staff with adequate time in the months of May and June to calculate the customized extraction estimate. If people do not comply with the policy, this allows us time to be able to submit the data to Ventura County and Santa Barbara County by the beginning of July, which is when we're required to get them all of the data. These are the topics we're covering over the 3 listening sessions. We're going to circle back to the well metering requirement, and then discuss well status and location, data collection, and exemptions. The next listening session on the 28th will cover the fees and billing and non-compliance and enforcement. So at the end of last listening session, we showed several photos of meters that we found in our January well meter survey, the different makes and models that are out there. We wanted to stress that in the policy there would be meter installation requirements as far as no outlets ahead of the meter. Needs to be compatible with the existing AMI system that's proposed if the AMI system moves forward. We've also we're proposing no insertion style flow meters in the policy as well. On the registration form, we would be asking for the flows used on the property to make sure that the meter is sized adequately and that it's not an undersized meter. And then all piping from the well to the meter must be above ground, no tees or outlets ahead of the meter. There are certain wells that we've come across that are below ground surface with manhole access. It does need to be above ground so that staff can access, verify reads, and install and maintain the AMI equipment. The sampling ports would need to be downstream as well for any sampling programs that you may be a part of. And meter installations must comply with all state and local requirements. And then what we want to stress here is that whatever meter that's compatible that you choose to install, it needs to be installed according to the manufacturer's specification. We have seen many that aren't installed per the specifications. There's typically necessary pipe length just before and just after the meter that are outlined. So we would be ensuring that the meter is installed as the manufacturer has designed it to, and so that it's recording the flows accurately. We have no, we could consider some exceptions if the calibration testing that's done every 3 years is done with the meter in place. So instead of a bench test, it's done in place, showing that it's still meeting that ±5% accuracy.
Quick question on measuring the flows and having it sized appropriately. Have you determined how you're going to do that? Because at one of the meetings, GSA meetings, it was mentioned about pipe size. And I know on our wells, the pipe size doesn't have anything to do with the flow. Like we've got a 50 gallon a minute with a 3-inch pipe. Well, a 3-inch pipe can handle a lot more. So my suggestion is to use the pump and motor information, what the maximum output is, and then the level of the water. I mean, it's gonna be a little tricky. And so that's just
Yeah.
something to think ahead for how that appropriateness is gonna be figured out.
Our main concern is velocities in the pipeline, so if you have a 3-inch pipe and you're pushing 500 gallons a minute through, a meter is not going to be able to measure reasonably. In fact, it'll just burn out after a very short period of time, but what we don't want to have is people looking at the pipe and saying, well, it's a 3-inch pipe, so it must need a 3-inch meter.
Right.
That's not always the case.
Exactly. And just one step further is, in our case, we pump at wellhead level, orchard, and 200 and 300 feet higher than wellhead level, so there can be quite a bit of difference in our flow. Everything else being the same, so just recognizing those dynamics.
Danielle, I'm not, what's an insertion valve meter? What is that? I'm not familiar with that term.
It's like a rod with a little paddle wheel on it, and you essentially put a saddle with a water connection, and it allows you to drill a hole and then insert it into the
Oh,
pipe.
so you want a real mechanical meter?
Well, the problem with these insertion style meters is they have to be placed exactly in the right position within the pipe. You have to know the exact inside diameter of the pipe to get it to calibrate. So, rather than using, we just start saying these are normal.
Makes total sense. That's
What does AMI stand for? Advanced Meter Infrastructure. It's just it's a fancy way of saying the ability to collect the information with the data with a transmitter into a central location.
This here is just a photo of an image from the internet showing what would be an approved installation with no keys ahead of the meter that's installed, and adequate upstream and downstream piping. You don't want to have 90s or butterfly valves immediately after to avoid turbulence. In addition to monitoring the flows through the meter during the billing period, modeling this after Fox Canyon, we are suggesting using well flushing estimation form. So if your meter is not installed yet, so during well development, or if you're doing well rehabilitation, there would be a form where you just estimate the amount of water that was removed during those processes and report that to the GSA.
It's a new well.
Right. And that would just be a standard form that we would provide on the website. And then we did have a question last meeting about how many wells are in the basin. So we went to our GIS maps in the basin and immediately in the perimeters that might need to be surveyed to determine whether they're in or out of the basin. There's 411 well records. We have, as Bob mentioned in the previous meeting, done a lot of field work following up on these well records. There was a study done in 2002 by consultants, and then we've also done a survey by mail in 2022. Many of you probably received those, asking you, is this information correct? Do you know about this well? So in following up on those surveys and meeting property owners out in the field, this is our current understanding of the status of those wells. So
Question, sorry, on page 12, are you gonna charge for the water that being, test pumped? And you need to report it.
Yeah, it'll be part of the total volume, so if you're, so when you're developing a well, often you're pumping a lot of water, just.
Right.
You know,
So did the owner of the well will be charged for that? No,
That's the intent.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, that's the intent.
So, based on those surveys and our growing understanding of active and inactive wells in the basin, we currently believe there's around 164 active wells. There's also 3 active CBWD wells, 10 inactive or monitoring CBWD wells, 73 inactive wells that we know about. From institutional knowledge, this CGSA staff go out and check groundwater elevations at a lot of these inactive wells. There's just an empty casing with no pump. There are several unknowns in here. Through our land use studies, we're very confident in who's pumping. However, if there's 3 or 4 well records on the property, which well is actually being used is the uncertain portion of that. So there will be a lot of follow-up and data gathering as the registration process moves forward.
And then, yeah, just point out that there are 100, of the 411, there are 129 that are not found. So we don't know where they are. We probably look for most of them. I don't know.
Yeah, so it's a mixture of not found and unknown status, whether they're.
Could I ask you a question about CBWD monitoring wells, the 10? Are those separate wells, or, because I know there's a lot of private pumpers that cooperate.
There's the 3 Century wells, the 3 El Caro wells, the El Caro well, headquarter well, or Sandy Mountain. So that's 6, 7, 8.
We got 3 production wells already, that's headquarters South Carroll.
Right. But there are monitoring wells at each one of those sites.
Oh, I see, okay, so it's 10 plus.
How many, I missed it, how many private well owners participate in that monitoring program?
I believe, I have to look at the total number. There's probably between 50 and 60 total wells, about 40 participate in
Oh, that's
the
great.
the sampling that we do in spring and fall, and then I think we just started reporting our Sigma annual report about 30 or 32 groundwater elevations that we're required that we go and check at the end of every even month. We have a sounding tape and we go record those, but then once a year we report those to the state.
Just in trying to track down how many active wells there are, I would think that the work you've done on calculating the acres of crop and the water going through the meters, and you have made that assumption that is sometimes right, and sometimes not, but it does get us down the road to that idea of, you know, if there's 8 acres of trees and they're getting 8 acres of water through the meter, then you probably don't have to worry about there being a well there. Right.
Or at least
That
not a used well.
Or not a used well.
So it's using water.
And they would have the historical, you know, how many years has that much water been going through there? You know, it's because it could become active, but I mean, just that thought of trying to narrow this thing down a little bit.
Yeah, we use that. I mean, we come at it from different angles,
Right.
just so we can kind of verify the data that we have.
So yeah, we're very confident in who's using groundwater, but like an example is I can think of a really long parcel. I've never been given access to the parcel. They never returned one of the surveys in 2022. I believe there's 4 or 5 wells that are recorded on that property. I don't know if they're using 2 of them, they're using 1 of them. Obviously the state well numbers are given in a sequential order, so you could assume that the one with the largest ending number is the newest, and that maybe they're using the newest well, but I know some people have multiple wells and they rotate between using them, so I don't. As far as
Follow the
that
wires.
Yeah, I mean, when you're drilling a well, as you all know, sometimes it's you know, you give it a try over here and that doesn't work, and you move it over here. Each one of those has a state well ID that we have to consider.
Oh, my.
Oh, they actually mark those if there was a dry hole?
They're given, any well completion report is given a unique number by the state.
I figured, you know, when you drill the well, once they finish it, that's what you get, the rest is zero.
They're issued a number and then that number, that database we use to, so. Again, a lot of these you can look at, their sequential numbers. So the guess is probably they were trying to find a spot where they were gonna get good production.
All right.
So just curious, so does the county notify you when the property owner abandons a well? I mean, because if you follow the county rules, I mean, it's just probably the safe way to do it because then you're protected. Do you get notified?
Abandoned or destroyed?
Well, it's destroyed, it's, well, sorry, destroyed. Fill it up with concrete, you know. Do you get notified?
We should,
You should now.
we should be.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know, I'm just asking.
well, I mean, again, I think as I said last time, we've been working on the county for a number of years to try to communicate better. We think they're there. And, you know, that activity is for a permit required, to make sure it's destroyed properly. So we would, theoretically get notified when a well is destroyed.
Right, and the only reason I bring it up is because when we drilled a new well, we wanted to abandon the old one because it could contaminate your new well. You know, I'm just wondering if the county is notifying the district. I mean, they should, but it's.
Yeah, they're doing a better job for sure. Okay. Of new wells and.
Yeah, we went in person in like 2018, scanned pretty much every file folder trying to get updated information that we may have been missing. So the 32 shown on here either have details, notes from old district staff from before the county took over the permitting process, saying when this started in 1963, or we have the actual well destruction report from the county. So there could be wells out there that were destroyed that we just missing paperwork, but through the registration process, we should fill in those data gaps.
Yeah, and this is the county of Santa Barbara we're talking about. Ventura is a little bit different, but they have pretty good record. Well,
Okay, so moving forward through the well status and location questions that will need to be answered in order to develop the policy. So the proposed questions are: what unique identifier will we be using to name and identify each well in the basin? And will the CGSA report abandoned wells with no intended future use to the two county agencies? What level of interaction will the CGSA have with these departments throughout the well registration process? So again, including those other groundwater management agencies for context, both Ojai and Fox Canyon use the state well number. We understand that not every well may have that number. We have a contact at DWR that if we have a well with a confusing or conflicting well number, we can send it to them and clarify that information. And when new wells are drilled, the driller is actually responsible for sending the well completion report to DWR, but we'll definitely follow up on it. And then as far as interaction with the different county agencies, Ventura County has very strict requirements that both Ojai and Fox Canyon agencies emphasize throughout their policy and their paperwork. So in Ventura County, if a well is not used at least 8 hours per year, they're considered abandoned and they should be destroyed. So if you're filling out their reporting information, you have to justify or explain why the well is currently not being actively used.
It would really be nice if in this process, there could be an effort to have well abandonment and destruction pooled in a way that would make it more economical, where you could say, okay, if you sign up within this time period, we'll get this company or these companies to do it for this amount, because it's pretty expensive on an individual basis. And so a landowner is more likely to try and just ignore it, let it slide. But if there's some incentive, there's some kind of incentive that could make a big difference, I think.
Yeah, and when we did this survey in 2002, we got a grant that actually, I think we destroyed like 10 wells.
Oh.
So that's something that GSA is interested in exploring, if there are grant money's out there for that type of thing.
Yeah, in 2002, they ranked the casing, the characteristics and how bad it was degrading, and then determined that way. Options.
So they used the funds for the 10 wells, did we destroy 10 wells?
I think it was, we applied for 10 and we only had enough money for 5. But yeah, we got 5.
Here's another question that may not have any. Because I've seen maps of old petroleum drought wells, are those impacting anything in our process? There's hundreds of them.
Yeah, typically those, they call them wildcat wells, those are, they typically don't, leave those open, so there's not much there. If there is a casing, it's a very, small diameter casing, so. We've never run across one, so. But you're right, they're all doing that.
Well, if I can find my map on it,
The all
I'll send it
USGS
to you.
maps, yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, could they even find it?
Bob, so is there any more grants available to destroy wells? I mean, in the
They come and they go, so that's sort of the thing that we watch for those types of programs. to come along.
Because I'm sure there's property owners that would volunteer to have their wells destroyed if they don't pay for it.
Yeah, there was a line of.
Oh, they're lined up.
That's-
Surprise, surprise.
So for what unique identifier will be used, CGSA is proposing using that state well number. Again, if you don't know your state well number, we might already have that on file, or you can obtain it from the Department of Water Resources. As far as our proposed level of interaction with the various county agencies, we've had conversations and discussions with them. They will inform the CGSA staff when there's a new well permit, and they'll pass on the registration meter and calibration forms as required by the policy. It's the owner's responsibility to comply with the policy, and the CGSA would not work on abandoned well compliance, but would rather maintain data internally about inactive and active wells. So if the registration form comes through saying this well is inactive, we would not be then just sending it over to the county. They're kind of separate databases, and just good for our institutional knowledge and maintaining well status information up to date. For data collection, how will the CGSA receive monthly private well meter data? And should the CGSA require an AMI system to be installed? And if so, what vendor should be used? So looking at the other agencies for context, Ojai does not receive monthly data. They only receive quarterly water use via paper statements. So people have to come in or mail in paper statements, make their payment. Fox Canyon utilizes 8 different AMI vendors, and those vendors send the data monthly to them. As far as the AMI system, Ojai doesn't have an AMI system. It's not required. Fox Canyon does require an AMI system, and unlike what CGSA is proposing, the AMI equipment is owned and maintained by the property owner, Fox Canyon. For the CGSA, we're proposing to use the CGSA maintained and managed AMI system. This would allow staff to easily export and manage the data for those annual submissions to the county tax rolls. If an AMI system is not implemented, we've heard from other agencies like Ojai that self-reporting, there's a lot of follow-up required for enforcing that. A lot of people not submitting those quarterly paper statements. So AMI would allow for staff to use their time efficiently and effectively to pull in and submit that data. We are proposing an AMI system to be required. However, rather than having the property owner own the equipment and maintain it and choosing their own vendor, we're suggesting to just have one vendor, which is the Badger's Beacon AMI system that we use on the CVWD wells. We're proposing this because we already have this system software, staff up the knowledge, and know how to add data to the system. And from the public feedback that we've received, it seems like those that are using the Island Water portal recognize the benefit of having that metered information. So back to the topic of inactive wells, what data forms or fees would the CGSA collect annually from inactive wells? Looking at the other agencies, in Ojai, owners must still fill out quarterly statements and pay fixed quarterly fees. For Fox Canyon, the owners must fill out an annual flow meter exemption form and submit annually to still be eligible to be exempt from installing a meter. So this is what the Ojai Basin quarterly statement looks like. If you go through the forms, there's a fixed $5 fee. Then there is, it's hard to read it there, a flat wellhead fee of $65. The minimum acre feet charge is $12.50. If it's an agricultural well, you're also paying for this PSP fee. So you're looking at $132.50 quarterly, so $530 a year for an inactive well. Again, Ventura County is very strict about abandoned wells, so this could be partially incentivizing them to go through the well abandonment process.
So it goes $530 for the inactive well.
Yes.
Is there another way to solve that?
Well, that's for the
That's
Ojai Basin.
Ojai.
This is the examples that we're
Oh,
looking
okay.
at. So looking at how other agencies are handling annual requirements for their inactive wells.
So how about Fox Canyon, are they requiring?
Fox Canyon, they have this handy flow meter exemption form,
Oh, you have to file the exemption.
but you have to fill it out every year and submit it, thinking that you used your well within 8 hours.
But they are so far behind, don't follow their system. If they are so far behind, it's ridiculous, years behind. If you complain something, if you need to get something changed, it can take years before you get it changed. But don't go with their system, it doesn't work.
But Fox Canyon does not require, does not penalize, I mean, or.
There's no fee.
There's
fee.
no fee
Yeah,
for it,
okay, yeah.
inactive one, where Ojai
How do
charges.
they handle wells that are for, let's say, fire control that aren't used for agriculture? And the other thought would be, I know in property for sale where they'll do a development and they'll do wells but have them capped as, you know, yes, there's water on this property, selling it for this much, and it may be capped for years, but it's still basically a new well that's just not used. How would you approach both of those situations?
So in our proposal is to have a flow meter exemption form that would be submitted annually and
Okay.
perhaps a small processing fee just to cover staff time for that update in the database and potentially every so often doing a site visit to just follow up on whether or not it's truly inactive. And also requiring if there is an Edison meter that you would need to submit the statements for the billing period showing that it really wasn't used during that time. And then if there's not an Edison meter, submitting photos of the empty casing with no pump in it. So those are our current proposals.
Yeah, just thinking that there may be a real advantage to the community to have, you know, a fire well that is on a generator. You know, something to that effect, because when the power goes out, and the fire is coming through and there's no power, you know, it's the same idea of having a generator run your house. It's just one of those things to recognize as a possibility, I'm thinking.
We have some exceptions that we can
Okay.
look at that.
Yeah, I think it might be, I mean, everybody's talking about more wildfires in the future, so. And if yeah, we can provide more water for our neighbors and stuff.
Yes, carpentry, have backup generations for, to keep the pressure on if electricity goes out.
Yes.
We were the only district that did not fail during the fires.
Yeah, since the Thomas fires, we learned a lot of lessons. But, you know, we continue to try to improve the system to make sure it's resilient towards firefighting.
But while you're talking about fire. Just, you know, the fire hydrant, so who maintains the fire hydrants? Is that the Carpenter Valley Water Testers? Why does it take like so long to get them fixed? I mean, there's one fire hydrant along Cedars Pass, and it probably was out of commission for 6 to 8 months.
I'm not sure in particular why that would be. It could have been just workload, you know. It was out of commission for, because it got hit or?
One was leaking,
Okay,
Water.
okay.
it was leaking, yeah.
Yeah.
I just know it.
We inspect all of our hydrants, we try to inspect all of our hydrants every year. And then we sort of rank, which ones to tackle first.
Was that all that work that was being done on Casitas Pass with the tank trucks and everything?
Hey, not the gas company, there was a brand new driveway. Yes, it was the Southern California Gas doing high pressure testing.
It looks like a very nice driveway you got.
Does it look really nice?
Hey, exactly.
I mean, the reason I'm asking about the fire hydrant is because they had to bring in 24 water storage tanks and daisy chain them all along the back of Del Pozo's. And in order to get those tanks in, they had to bring in 2 cranes because of course they couldn't turn them on the trucks. Had that fire hydrant been working, none of that would have been done. We would have a brand new run.
Well, they should have called Bob.
Yeah.
They're lost, or.
Yeah.
Lost.
It was quite a project.
Yeah, and we've seen them in some of the other fields where they've been in pressure testing.
Yeah.
It is a big deal.
To follow up on Scott's question, how about well shafts that don't have a pump? Obviously, there's nothing to report, so do you expect to,
Those are inactive wells in our.
so if there's no pump in it, they're in there?
Yeah, so the requirement would be just to submit a inactivity form annually.
Once a year?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
And, you know, as we evolve, we'll try to make these things a little bit easier, perhaps having a web, web form that we can fill out, instead of having a paper form.
And at this point, there's no indication that there will be an allocation process to each well or each acre or so.
No, not at this point. You know, we're at the beginning of a 20-year process, and so as we try to, you know, that's pretty far down the road if that were to happen. Right now, we're just trying to understand, you know, is the basin going to recover just naturally from the rainfall that occurs, or is it continue to be lower? And one of the big threats that we have is seawater intrusion coming into the basin, so that's what we're really looking at, that to make sure that that doesn't advance any further. Yeah.
Now, are we, with all the testing you do, are we finding that the water table is coming up?
But I don't know if you're into that anymore, but yeah, we definitely are seeing water come up.
Right, I noticed in the ranch well, it went up substantially, probably 25 feet.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, from the lows. Couple of wet years do a lot.
Well, this isn't one of them.
No, it's
No.
not. We had 2 prior to this one that.
we're not done yet, we need a few more.
Two out of 3, not bad.
To make flowers.
We're up to what, 8 inches, I think, so far for this year.
Something like that. I don't wanna hold up this meeting, there's a lot of people online, so we'll just keep moving here.
Well, they're supposed to ask questions too. So,
So for the exemptions, the questions that need to be addressed are what wells are exempt from installing meters, if any, as we talked about, inactive wells. Filling out an annual flow meter exemption form. There are some requirements within Sigma for de minimis wells that we'll talk about here shortly. We also need to determine if there should be any exemptions for the AMI system equipment. So the other agencies have various exemptions for private wells. in Ojai if the owner can demonstrate with evidence that the facility draws from a hydrologic source other than the basin, various motor horsepower variations and variances that they allow for. As far as AMI system equipment, AMI is not required in Ojai. Fox Canyon does have some domestic operator exemptions. However, the reason that they have AMI system exemptions is because, again, it's owned by the property owner and maintained by them, so it could be deemed a financial burden to maintain that for such a small domestic water system, so that's why they have their domestic operator exemption in place. For the CGSA, we propose to only allow exemptions for inactive wells and de minimis wells as defined under Sigma. As previously stated, the concept is for the property owners to fill out the annual exemption forms, essentially an affidavit annually, along with photos or Edison bills, additional proof as it deems adequate. So de minimis wells under Sigma are groundwater wells that pump less than 2 acre-feet per year, and it's fully for non-agricultural purposes. So we covered in the last listening session that we don't believe there's that many of those wells in the Carpenter groundwater basin. The properties that we know of that are using well water for their domestic source oftentimes are sharing with other properties that are using them for agricultural purposes. And as far as exemptions for AMI system equipment, the CGSA proposes that if a meter is required, then a CGSA owned and maintained endpoint transmitter would be required. We're suggesting no exemptions for AMI equipment since there's no financial burden to the well owner. And then the official question and comment period begins. So please state your name before your question or comment.
I got a couple. So Scott Vanderkar. And not that they have to be answered right now, but just questions that come to mind. One is, when we get down the road further and we're needing to have these certified, are there gonna be enough qualified certifiers out there? And are they gonna have the technology to do it efficiently and economically? So just one of those things looking in the future. I don't know how many there are right now. I think we did come, when we put a meter on, we did come across a name in Ventura. And I think, tried to hook him up with you, Bob, or gave him your name just because that's what he does in Ventura County. But so that's one thought of, having it efficient and having well owners not being late because they couldn't get somebody there in time. The other thing that I hadn't really thought about until tonight, and that is, we're a relatively small basin, and I'm not sure how the number of wells relates to our cost of doing business for the CGSA. But my understanding is that basically it's our annual budget, the CGSA annual budget, divided by the number of acre feet that comes out of the ground. Well, it doesn't seem as though we in this basin should be paying like twice as much for an acre foot of water because we have not that many private well owners to do that calculation. You see where I'm going with that? Ventura County, we may, they may have, let's say, a $500,000 budget for whatever district it is, and a whole bunch of wells to divide it by, a whole bunch of acre feet to divide it by. Whereas here in Carpinteria, that's not necessarily the case, or anywhere else. Just, we know how much state water costs, or how much state water costs. You know how much your water costs for pumping it out of the ground. But neither of those calculations are related to a budget divided by the number of acre feet pulled out by the folks who are doing it. So just another thought of, how this can be fair.
Yeah, I mean, the basin, the size of the basin and the sustainable yield that you can extract on an annual basis is what it is. I mean, we don't have any control over that. The budget, although we are trying to be as efficient as we can, is what it is. And so I don't, as far as fairness goes, it's, you know, as fair as it can be within the basin. If you start comparing it to other basins, they just have different, you know, it's the same with the water system. If you compare rates of this water system to another, it's not apples to apples because there are various different complexities to each system, and so.
And you do that regularly when you are looking at costs, and I see the notifications coming out and, you know, I'll see San Diego is paying this much per acre feet. You know, this area, Ventura is paying this much. I just hope we're at the low end for the CGSA of paying this much for our per acre foot.
Well, I mean, if it's any indication, our basin's in relatively good shape compared to most basins. And so I think that would be predictor of lower overall budgets, you know.
And it looks like the budget is at the lower end of other GSAs. I mean, at least the ones that I saw up there at San Ynez. But I think it's worth tracking. So if we need to do a better job, we do a better job.
Okay, Scott, I like to make a comment. This is Case. I was talking to Greg Lewis. He was joking. He said, yeah, in Oxnard, a well pulls 2,000 gallons a minute. Here in Carpinteria, maybe 100 gallons a minute. We might have more wells in Carpinteria than monitor than the Heavy Fox Canyon because they have a lot bigger wells over there. So they might be able to do it cheaper than we can. So it'd be interesting to see if we get to that point that we at least track roughly how many gallons a minute these wells throw, so to compare to Ojai or Santa Maria or Fox Canyon for that matter.
And then another response to your comment, I know Bob covered it in the last listening session, but the water district active production wells are also being charged the CGSA fees, so it's not just the 100 to 200 active wells or properties that are currently being assessed the fee.
And then is that reflected then in the residential water bills? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
We
So,
indirectly collect from the water customers to pay the GSA of those 1,000 per year.
Okay, Bob, got another question. It's Case again. Is the district prepared to maintain these endpoints for the well owners? Since we're already doing it for our own meters.
That's the plan.
Scott, I mean, to me, it seems to me if people want to be compatible to the district already has the people that know how to replace endpoints and how to verify that they're working or not. So, I mean, we have it available and probably less expensive than go hunting out a contractor to do it.
Yeah, and we, you know, the idea behind utilizing staff, for water district staff to do, you know, the work that needs to be done for the GSA is it's an effort to be efficient and not have to hire dedicated staff because there really is not full-time position, at least for now, for the GSA. And so the way we do it is we simply bill any work that the water district staff is doing for the GSA to the GSA. So
Right, so the plan is that if the GSA maintains the endpoints, and if the endpoint goes out, the computer will notify our system. So, I mean, you know, it really makes sense for all the well owners to be part of the Carpinteria iron water or the iron well water system. Is it going to be a separate system or the same system?
it'll be the same system, but housed in a different database. So.
Got it. So, problem solved.
Well, now what problem is that solving?
That your endpoints will always be monitored, that they're working, you always be accurate, because as soon as they go down, the system will tell you that your transmitter is not working.
Right, so,
that's
and
it.
my question was then that next step of who do we go to fix it? You
Well,
know,
the endpoint or the meter?
whatever it takes to be back online.
The AMI
Yeah.
system, you go to the water district.
Yeah,
They own them. You go to them.
you probably will probably contact you before you I'm saying it's not working.
So actually, there are really two systems we're talking about. There's the transmitting system, which is one thing, and there's the accuracy of the meter.
Oh, that's
Right.
the owner, that's a property owner's responsibility.
But if you buy a good meter, yeah, but if you buy a good meter, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I wasn't worried about the transmitting side. I was more concerned about, every 3 years. I mean, for instance, I would think we might want to stagger implementation, so everybody's not trying to do it after 3 years.
Yeah, that's a good comment. The backflow device, approach is, it's not one time per year, right? Everyone has a different date of a due date.
So backflow devices, everyone has their own set test month.
Yeah, so I would say that's a good model.
That kind of an idea, exactly.
Well, right, and again, I'm not gonna mention brand names, but if you buy a quality meter, some of those have proven to be accurate for a lot of things, particularly electronic meters.
But still, the requirement will not go away every 3
I
years.
know that, but it's okay, because if it's accurate, you don't do anything.
Well, yeah, if it's.
I mean, you
accurate,
still have to pay for the testing.
You have to test, so.
It's okay. for the testing.
You don't pay for the meter.
Yeah.
uh,
But I mean, it might be to an advantage to have the meter checked every 3 years in case it is off, and maybe it's from a higher number than it should be.
and Daniel, Fox Canyon has a list of testers.
Yeah, they have a list.
Yeah.
Of vendors that do the meter?
Yeah. So.
See.
We probably would be like on this.
You have those other meters here.
Well, we would provide that list to you all. So you could.
But the water department has, I'm assuming, people that need to calibrate, you need to be calibrated as well.
Well, so when we do meter calibration, we do it through Siemens. And they actually pull meters and do a bench test.
Mhm.
I think probably the preferred method's gonna be in situ or in place meter test. For these ones, so.
Could I ask a question? I'm Shirley Johnson, representing the residential segment. So with the AMI, I think it's a good idea to have them all the same, to have the GSA be responsible for them. Cause if you had a bunch of different softwares, it'd be weird. But, so the residential, class of customers has 3 AMI, pumping points, which is the 3 district wells. And then if you have all, the other private pumpers, they're also going to have AMI units. Who pays for those?
The private well,
Yeah, all the,
the
they're all.
GSA will supply those and own those.
And so the GSA, so does that mean that the residential, we pay a portion of the GSA cost through the amount of acre feet pumped by the district? And so, and that also includes agriculture, delivery and residential. So the residential is going to pay a portion of all the
Yeah, so-
AMI that are installed on private properties.
Yeah, by way of the budget, so the GSA has an annual budget. In that budget, there are various costs, including, equipment. And so everybody who pumps water from the groundwater basement will be pitching into that equipment through the budget.
Oh, on the basis of how much you pump.
Right.
Oh, okay, so, yeah, even though the district only, is not.
The district will be pumping, on the order of 1,000 acre feet per.
Yeah,
year.
yeah,
So it will-
okay, well, just to know the residential is helping pay for your AMI units.
It'll be one big happy family.
Well, yeah, because the district already has AMI units on their pumping.
We don't on our well, we have a SCADA system, but this would be, we would connect a beacon at AMI endpoint or.
Okay, so we have 3,
Yeah.
okay. Fine, that's.
Great, I just, and Bob, you verify this true or not, but my understanding, when we put in the new AMI system, we realized that we were underbilling all our customers by 10% because the AMI meters were more accurate than the mechanical meters. Keep an eye on it.
You're talking about the $19 million Siemens system.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're now paying for itself because we're able to bill the customers for what they're using.
I've had it go the other way with the Sandus Water District, so two sides always.
So the AMI, technology will be supplied by the water department? Your meters just have to be able to adapt to it?
Yes.
Compatible.
Okay, alright, just curious. But we need to put in the meters.
Jerry, but I understand you have a symmetrics on the well that you put in, so I think that you should be.
This is the one that we have.
Okay, so are there any people online that have any comments or questions? We've been kind of chattering here. I see a few people have left.
The only thing we're missing is drinks, so we'd have a party here.
We make it to the third meal. During the campaign. Lisa, are there any questions online?
No, I don't have any questions submitted.
Okay,
It's pretty clear, yeah, pretty straightforward.
all right, well, that's good. We're at 6:32, so we're close to the wrap up time here. Any final thoughts, questions that you'd like to communicate, either online or in the room?
The next meeting is April 28th.
I say the sooner the better, we have, then our water line.
But what are we gonna learn then? Is it's gonna be, everybody should participate in that, that's what you're saying?
Yeah, so in the first, we talked about whether the policy would be mandatory, and the GSA's proposal was that it be mandatory, everyone needs to have a meter and a name on it.
Why would we be sitting around this table for that? I mean, I would imagine that would be the direction of this. If you wanna monitor the basin, that's the only way you can be able to do it.
I think Ohio is not mandatory, is that right?
I would need to check the
Yeah.
language. They're
We
having
could vote on
a
that?
very hard time getting meters installed.
Well, you can, so what we're trying to do today and with these listening sessions is trying to get feedback from the stakeholders of who you are. We have an idea what we think will work better. So we're proposing certain ways to go within this policy. We have an overwhelming amount of feedback that that's not gonna work for the stakeholders, then we'll have to consider that.
And so this is what we'll be discussing in the next meeting.
The next meeting, we would be covering.
We'll be covering the fees and billing and how to handle non-compliance and enforcement. And looking again at how the other agencies are handling it, and that will cover all of the topics, and then we can always review previous topics if, somebody like yourself didn't make the first meeting, you wanna go watch it, and then you have some follow-up questions, you can kind of address everything at the end before we start drafting the policy.
Right, but at this point in time, it is not been decided if it's gonna be mandatory or not. Is that?
No, what we'll do is, when we're finished with these listening sessions, we'll develop a policy document. And we'll present that to the GSA board. We'll give the feedback that we received in public to the board. Anyone can come to that meeting when they're actually we'll actually have a public hearing. Anyone can come to that meeting and make comments. And then the board will have to decide whether they want to adopt policy as is or make changes.
So Gary, the sooner you have a meter, the sooner you can prove whether the district is billing you to the property tax accurately or not, because now we're using avocado so much, lemon so much, greenhouse so much. So if you disagree, put in a meter, prove it's wrong.
Oh, so that's how it could work in the sense of,
That's how we.
voluntarily, if you don't have a meter, then you'll estimate.
Yeah, and we've been doing it that way, as you may know. When we know that you have a well, or we suspect that there's a well, we look at the acreage of various crops, we assign a factor to each one of those acres of crops. And then we calculate what the water demand is. We look at your water meter, and we say, okay, so much came from the water meter. The rest has to be coming from from the well.
And that's not a good way to do it. The meter is the way to do it.
We think it's a good way, but we have been proven that it's not perfect, and so we're willing to, look at the meters and.
Yeah. It's the fairest way to go.
The policy,
I get that.
having meters installed would also allow us to go to a more, recent billing period instead of using trailing years as well. So, but why they haven't used my, well, in the last 6 months, well, this is actually based on fiscal year 2023, so.
Yeah, it's typically a year and a half.
Right, you're, what we're talking about today, you're off by a year. But before you can react.
So Scott Vanderkart, last question for me for the night is, there are other technologies out there, but none of those have proven to be accurate enough to replace a meter. That would be, the Edison meter converting that
Yeah.
power usage to acre feet or
But everyone's
Other
wells
methods.
different.
my understanding is the meter is the way to go, but I really don't know enough about the technology out there to say it's the best way to go.
I mean, I know Robert Abbott invited us to his property and to see a system that they use, but I think the real driver for them to use that system was more to gain efficiency in terms of where they're actually applying water. Because that particular system monitored sort of soil moisture, I believe, and it also monitored, when it thought was getting pumped out of the well using the electrical bills. In that system, the problem with that from our perspective is, you can have changes happening within the pumping system that affect the relationship between the power consumption and the actual volume. Very, very slight changes can dramatically affect so. So we're kind of like, well, that's, if you're gonna buy a software system that tries to estimate that, you're probably gonna be off, it's probably gonna cost as much, if not more, to maintain that software system, that meter, so.
Well, as time goes by, there'll be more technology and they get to something, but right now that seems to be the best way to go. Meters, yeah, got it.
So is the next listening session the last opportunity for public input, or will there be a comment period afterwards?
There'll be a comment period after, and then the real final, opportunity will be at the GSA board meeting, in which we present the policy, and I think
And where is it at?
it's at City Hall, and do we have the date of that, on the schedule?
We do not, we just, the proposed policy adoption is prior to the end of June, but we're hoping within the month of May, but wanting to give staff enough time.
Yeah.
To implement.
So, yeah, as we approach June, we'll be advertising that public hearing.
Bob, I do have one person online that would like to make a comment.
Okay.
It's Yulia. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Yulia Gebel. We grow avocados and cherimoyas, 7 acres. And I haven't been to the first session, so I don't know the details, but it seems like installing the meters and all this work that the district is doing would definitely raise the cost of raising the crop. We have the $500 non-operational for water meter use, and then there will be additional fee for wells. And it seems like it would be an additional fee for the district as well, for maintenance, for monitoring and all that. And also, by the way, the sound on Zoom is not really great. Like I could hear you, but it's sort of at the distance. So I hope I got everything you were talking about.
Yeah, I apologize for that. We've been having some audio visual issues with our system. So I think maybe you're conflating a few things. The $500 was the Ojai Basin fee that they charge. We wouldn't be charging that. And the fee that would come from the meter program is probably pretty close to the fee that you're already paying. And so, you know, although it is a fee, I'm not sure it's going to significantly change. The meter program's not significantly change the amount that you pay into the GSA fee.
Just out of curiosity, does the person asking the question know that she has been charged through the property tax bill? Because I've run into several neighbors who didn't even know that.
Julia, do you know if you've been receiving the charge?
I don't know.
Yeah, so
is that-
if you look at your tax bill, there likely will be a GSA fee on the lower portion.
Yeah, but again, our taxes go up every year. It's not getting cheaper to live here or grow crops. So my concern is that it goes up every year. Is there end to it? But I know it's not your responsibility. We're talking about water here. But just raising concern of all the additional fees and additional processes and controls that we're imposing on everything. So that would be my comment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This brings up a really good point of people maybe not recognizing that they're already being charged on their an assumed amount, an guesstimate amount on the property tax bill. And it could be that with the installation of the meters, it will be accurate and it may be less than what they're paying. It's that possibility.
Yeah.
Some will pay more, some will pay less.
Right, Bob, did the district do a study that a well owner that private pumper that pumps less than water for less than 10 acres of ground is probably better off, or sorry, it's might be cheaper to use district water instead of their well?
Yeah, so the cost of entry for a well typically will require more than 10 acres to break even.
Right, because if you drill a new well, even if it's a 50-year depreciation, however, it's still cheaper. I mean, that's what the study showed. That if you farm less than 10 acres of ground, you might be better off staying with the district.
Except you need to be able to deal with chlorine and that kind of stuff that you guys put in.
That would, it kills a lot of bacteria.
So nice, but we don't always want that, you know, for your.
Well,
Any other questions online? Or comments?
No, I don't see any others.
All right. So with that, we're a little bit over time. We're gonna wrap it up. Thank you, everyone. Going over time. We'll post this on the website. Again, the slide presentation as well as the video. And you intend to come to the last one, we'll see you at that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks. Hey, Bob.
Yeah.